Hello there and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Chris and today we're going to take a look around at the Havilland Mosquito, fondly known as the Timber Terror, due to the fact that the aircraft was completely built from timber. Hold tight. When de Havilland first proposed the idea of a high-speed twin-engine bomber, the Air Ministry were generally very hostile to the plan and turned them down. But de Havilland was not to be put off and continued with their project as a private venture. The proposal was based on reducing weight by removing the gun turrets and having a crew of 2 instead of 6. De Havilland's prototype was found, when first test flown, to have a top speed of 392 miles an hour, and thereafter the Air Ministry took up their production.
Possessed of an overwhelming desire to fly, Geoffrey de Havilland left the motor industry in 1908 and set about building an aeroplane. He was joined by another young engineer named Frank Hurl. Their first machine came to grief, but around the undamaged engine, these two men built an improved aeroplane, and on this, de Havilland taught himself to fly. These experiments led to a series of combat aircraft for the first great struggle with Germany, notably the DH-4 high-performance bomber. The DH-9 and 9A bomber reconnaissance, built in vast numbers, and a larger aircraft intended for bombing German industry, the DH-10. By 1918, a third of the Allied Air Force and 95% of all the American production were machines of de Havilland design. For 20 years, the team concentrated on civil aircraft. The DH-34 cross-channel liner of 1922. The DH-50, pioneer of Empire services. The Moth, that set a light aeroplane standard. The Hercules for the Cairo-Baghdad airway. The Puss Moth for private travel at 20 miles to the gallon. The Tiger Moth, trainer of the Empire. Dragon, for light traffic without subsidy. The DH-86 for the Imperial Mail, Singapore to Brisbane. The Little Comet, victor in the great race to Australia. The Dragon Rapide, champion of economy with the small load. The Albatross liner of 1938, which cut the London to Paris time to within the hour. The Flamingo all-metal liner, which first appeared on the London to Jersey service in '39. The DH-4 was a bomber with fighter speed, and it was the restatement of this principle a quarter of a century later which led to the creation of the fastest aircraft of its day in the world, the Mosquito.
What's your finest memory from your entire aviation career?
Surviving the trip on the 10th of February 1944. And we caught up to it about 60, 70 miles out over the North Sea, the cloud, and it was a German, and he was going home flat out, and it was a different model. It was either a 388 Junkers 88 or a 188, and my navigator, who was a real enthusiast on information like this, after we shot it, it was in flames and going down, he said, let's get in closer so I can give more information to the intelligence people when we get on the ground. That was the stupidest thing I ever did in my life. I moved on in, and as I was getting close, and the airplane was completely in flames, but the mid-upper gunner was still in his turret on this airplane, and I saw the turret moving around to come bear on me, and I broke as hard as I could to the left, and he started at about 6 inches from one wingtip and finished up 6 inches from the other wingtip, but 30-some rounds of 13 millimeter into my airplane, 2 or 3 through the cockpit. My navigator had perspex into his face and things, and one went up, and we sat side by side, and one of the bullets went right through between the two of us, amongst other things. Well, both engines were badly shot up. One of them, the piston was shot right out of it on the right-hand engine, and I was going to crash land. The radio was still working at the big bomber crash strip in Norfolk, and they said, we can't take you because the air is littered with bombers coming back from a raid. So we tried, and we went on to Bradwell Bay, which was about another 50, 60 miles with this airplane in this shape. And we landed, and the one thing that was most interesting on that, when I went to put on the brakes, there weren't any brakes. One of the rounds had gone through the air bottles in the back, so I ground looped in the middle of the airfield, and there was the airplane just dripping fuel and all the rest. It never caught fire.
Tiger moths by the thousand for training our greatly expanding Air Force. Dragon Rapides for auxiliary air traffic and for use as flying classrooms in the teaching of navigation. And Flamingo liners, a vigorous British bid for world markets thwarted by the war. Remove the guns, gunners and turrets and all the extra fuel and structure needed to carry them. Build instead an aeroplane just big enough for a crew of 4 250-pound bombs, fuel for 1,500 miles, and it would certainly be 100 miles an hour faster, as fast as a fighter. The engineers argued that the Mosquito was a special case. If successful, it might well revolutionize the pattern of aerial warfare. It was to be built of wood and would make only slight demands on the metal industries which were being so hard pressed. Improved technique in the making of high-strength castings, for instance, had almost entirely eliminated forgings from the design, so that the material schedule showed light alloy castings totaling 250 pounds, but forgings a mere 30 pounds. Looking ahead, the ministry decided to reinstate the Mosquito, but it was not to interfere with the company's more serious work, the building of trainers and the adapting of tiger moths to carry bombs as a rather pathetic last-minute measure for attacking the expected invader. The Battle of Britain rent the skies. But in the secrecy of a barn-like hangar beside the old country house, the prototype was fast taking shape. The prototype was ready for test by November 1940, 11 months from the start of the design. She was covered with tarpaulins to hide her form from frequent German raiders. The technicians liked the look of her very much. A few straight hops and off she went on her first flight. Geoffrey de Havilland reported favorably to his father. From the first, there were discussions about increasing the load. By cropping the vanes of the standard 500-pound bomb, 4 of this size, instead of the 4 250-pounders, could be housed in the same bomb bay. And so the designed load was doubled before ever the aircraft went into service. Meanwhile, a night fighter version had been hurried forward under pressure of the Blitz. The designers had provided for 4 20mm cannon in place of the bombs, which, together with 4 machine guns, gave a concentrated and destructive firepower. On May the 15th, 1941, from a 450-yard field beside its secret hangar in the country, the fighter prototype made its first takeoff. special interest now fully awoke.
Well, I really hope you found that interesting. It's just a brief insight into the life and the flying times of the de Havilland Mosquito. A very, very interesting type of aircraft, and hope you enjoyed it. Please take care, have a happy new year, and see you on the next film. Cheerio!